Hi, my name's Hank, and I'm going to try to do this as best I can while I drive. Mind you, I am not using my hands other than to manage the location of the device, and I'm not touching it now, so there is no concern for safety. My attention is directly in front of me and around me, and I see everything. So I hope that this is okay with you. If not, so what? But anyway, I wanted to take a moment and talk about human trafficking. What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is the modern day means of slavery. That's it. I mean, human trafficking is a process of slavery. People are forced to live and work in adverse conditions that no one should be subjected to. Human traffickers find easy targets. Okay? What is an easy target? Well, let's say you're an illegal immigrant. You're wanting to go to America and make a better life for yourself. So you go out and you find a source who claims that they have the ability to sneak you into America. But once you get to America, you have to work and pay off your debt to the person that helped you get to America to pay for your freedom, to earn your freedom back. So once those victims unknowingly are brought into the United States, the human trafficker, the predator, I'll call them, will acquire the paperwork that shows that that person that they are trafficking even exists. Passports, visas, birth certificates. So that human trafficker or the predator acquires any personal data that that person may be taking with them that shows that they even exist. And that trafficker will hold on to it and tell that person you will work until you've paid back your debt. And the thing is the person actually believes that, but they never find the day that they are free. In all actuality, less than 2% of those in human trafficking will ever be rescued or found. And at this time, there are more than 27 million victims that are being processed in the network of human trafficking. 27 million people. That's more than any time period in the history of America. In the history of the world, there are more people in human trafficking or slavery today than what there ever has been in any other time era in the history of humanity. I would like to add, we focus on slavery as being whites suppressing blacks. That is pretty accurate, I guess, for the early 20th, late 19th century. And, I mean, time only stands to prove that, blacks were oppressed prominently here in America. But the thing about human trafficking or slavery, it has always entailed white people as well. So it has been said that human trafficking does not discriminate. It don't care if you're white, if you're black, if you're Asian, if you're Latino. It don't care if you're old, if you're young, if you're fat, if you're skinny. What it does care about is if you're able to provide a service And if you're able to lift, push, work, pull, you can do some work. And the human traffickers will find the way to get that work out of you. Now, one of the processes that we have learned that human traffickers will do is they identify an easy target. And I like to use immigrants as my examples because they are one of the easier targets. Let's say you got a mom and a dad in Mexico. Mom and dad live in a house with dirt floors and the walls are collapsing. That's pretty much the run of the mill of a third world country on how living conditions are. They don't have the luxury of taking warm and cool showers on a hot or cold day because they don't have the running water to do so. So what they do is mom and dad decide we want a better life for our child. So the human traffickers will then sit, and mom and dad will honestly come in contact with someone that knows the human traffickers that says, hey, this person can get your child into America. Mom and dad says, oh, let's do this. And once you get there, we'll come and get you or we'll come and join you. But just go and get an education, get a good job. Well, their child is then gone. Mom and dad is left to hope the best, but their child could find themselves living in no different living conditions than what they are exposed to in Mexico. Now they are not given the opportunity to seek out a medical help in the event, let's say they get the flu. You get the flu and it can't be cured by over-the-counter drugs, you're in trouble. You just became a liability. That victim has just become a liability to that human trafficker. So rather than taking the chances of getting caught, the human trafficker will dispose of the victim as if the victim is trash. We've seen instances where the human traffic victim was just left on the side of the road. There have been reports of unmarked graves popping up in random places of people that honestly have no record of because they are illegal immigrants and there's no record of them being in America. So they just go away. You don't hear about them because they're not even supposed to be here to begin with, so they just go away. But yet, that human trafficker will go and find another person to victimize to fill the shoes of that individual. Now, one of the other things that human traffickers have done is they have found a network where they can tap into resources in the more, industrial principles, I guess, where you got these big companies that have like hard labor work that needs to be done. And it would cost too much to go out and hire individual law-abiding, tax-paying, hard-working, legal American citizens. It would cost more money. It would cost companies too much money. So they go out and they look for these independent contractors. Now, it just so happens that these independent contractors have found their way into the system with their victims. So now instead of being identified as a human trafficker, this is an independent contractor. So this independent contractor takes his unknowing victims and presents them as work objects, tools. And the big industry will offer much less per person than what they would have to pay a legal American citizen. And it's under the table, so they don't have to pay taxes. And being that it's under the table, they don't have to provide medical care and any other comfort of living. Because that's up to the contractor at that point, right? So these human traffic victims now work on a big stage, earning just enough money, if they are lucky, to give them food for the day. Some of them don't get food at all. It's some of the most horrible living conditions anyone could be exposed to. But yet we are so focused on erasing slavery issues and the history of slavery, we haven't even combated the fact that it exists today, and that it is more prominent today than it has been in the history of mankind. Right now, human trafficking stands to be the number 2 money-making industry in the world, making over $40 billion a day. Human laborers are a great resource for cheap labor. And all it takes is for one person to understand that there are people out there that are easy to victimize, and they take advantage of the system. Some of the politicians high up in our ranks support this. Some of the politicians that have been put in place understand, from what I've heard them say, that this is the part of democracy that allows our government to function. So at what point does slavery make our government function? Obviously, to them, it's working well enough that they don't have to address it or combat it. Yeah, there are things in place. You got ICE. They're doing their best to keep stuff like that under control. And, I mean, as much as what you have for good, you got even more for bad. It's been said that a criminal that's practicing a crime has been exposed to that criminal nature and that way of life for such a long time that they are leading the way in crime because there is no system in place to prevent it. I mean, it's sad that a human trafficking criminal, predator, will only see at worst 5 to 10 years for if they're caught. And they're not even charged with kidnapping or anything like that. It's a human trafficker typically will get charged for something that doesn't reflect or represent the fact that they kidnapped someone and is using them as a slave. It helps them stay in the system. So they'll go to jail at worst case scenario 5, maybe 10 years tops, because there is no penalty that says that it is against the law to provide that kind of service yet. Because we have not identified human trafficking as a crime. So, what is America going to do about this? I mean, are we just going to deny building the wall? The wall that it would be put in place to deter and make it more difficult for human traffickers to walk their unknowing victims across the border? Or even have those human traffic victims mule drugs across the border? So you're winning, you're doing a double 2 for 1. You got your human traffic victim that doesn't know, but they're muling drugs across the border for their freedom is what they expect. But when they get over, if they find their way over to America, they're actually not free. They go back to doing the same job over and over and over. So, yeah, the wall, it's a symbol, if anything. But it is a huge deterrent that makes it more difficult for those actions to happen. And when you make it difficult for someone to gain access, they have to make a bigger voice, leave a bigger thumbprint to figure out a way to get around the deterrent. So if the wall was built, yeah, they might dig tunnels, but there's going to be a lot of chatter. And you're going to hear about it, so you can catch that. But without a wall, these people can walk slaves in and out of our country free willy-nilly. And don't forget, America leads the world in human trafficking. The world, people. One of the worst cities in America to live in regards to human trafficking is Tampa Bay, Florida. It is ranked third for the highest population of human trafficking. Tampa Bay, Florida. I mean, it's sad. And you see the victims of all ages, of all ethnicities. I mean, one of the youngest I think I've encountered, as far as reading the investigative reports of, is a young child. This is sad and it's hard to talk about. There was a report that this event was occurring. So the report came across that this brothel, I'll say, had this baby, literally a baby, 7 months old, doing sexual favors. So when the investigation took place, they learned that this 7-month-old child had been on his back for so long that the back of his head had become flat. It had become flat because that was the position he was used to laying in, because his responsibility was to provide oral sex to males, and the child learned that his payment was in the form of semen as a source of food. And then you got 70, 80-year-old people working out in these big industrial size gardens or whatever, doing labor that people half their age should be doing. But yet they're all working for the same purpose, to earn their freedom. And yet we can't get past the fact that black people were oppressed and held as slaves, that we have already, as a country, established, identified, stopped, and have started to provide for everyone as equal opportunity. But yet we can't get past that history, and we're trying to erase it. I mean, Notre Dame University has announced that they will not display historical paintings of such as Christopher Columbus because of the fact that it was an invasion, I guess, and this country was taken away from the indigenous people because of Christopher Columbus. I'm sorry to say, but if it wasn't Christopher Columbus, it would have been someone else. And with the mindset of why Christopher Columbus wanted to establish a new country for freedom and democracy, is a lot better than having a tyrannical finder from like China to have and make America a country for China. I mean, things would have been a lot bloodier, a lot worse. I mean, that's up to speculation, obviously, because, I mean, that's hard to even call for the fact that it never happened. But it's hard to believe that if a tyrannical leader had founded America instead of Christopher Columbus, it's hard to believe that anything would be any different today than what it would have been then, if not worse. So, covering up the pictures and taking down the statues, you're not getting rid of our history. That is a part of us, and that is our moral fiber from day one. It helped define us as who we are today. But yet, so many people in society are so hell-bent on removing these offensive landmarks because it reflects or is a symbol of slavery and how oppressed black people were. I feel bad for anyone that was enslaved, that was a slave. It's something that is horrible, but it lives and breathes today as much as it did then. Why are we not addressing that fact today? Why are we not combating that today? I'll tell you why. Because some big money man is profiting and don't want you to stop him or her. But someone up there in the chop chain, I'll call him an elitist, him or her, an elitist. There's only a few of them in the world, but they have enough economical power to influence the world and what the world does. And for that reason, it will be tough to combat human trafficking. I mean, if we're the only ones concerned about it and not getting enough support to even talk about it, then the government doesn't have to do nothing to prevent it. So I just ask, I mean, if you're watching this, I ask for your involvement, to intervene, to say something. But stop human trafficking. Don't try to erase our history. Our history is what made America so freaking great. I mean, if you get in and you delve into the history of America, you will learn that we have succeeded in doing things that no other country could ever even imagine. Even our sovereignty. Our sovereignty was a stake placed against us that was 1,000,000 to 1 odds. It was said statistically that it would be impossible to rebuild a whole nother country without the influence of the host country, which would be Britain. And if it would have been someone else, it would have been a different country. But for us, it was the influence of Britain. But we earned our sovereignty because we did not want to be under a dictatorship. And that is kind of where we're heading or leading ourselves to go. Right back into that living situation where it's not good to have your own freedom to speak or free speech. We're trying to take away our First Amendment and our Second Amendment. So what are we supposed to do? I mean, if we can't talk about our problems and share them with everyone else equally, how are we going to resolve conflict? If we don't have the right to bear arms, how can we prevent a tyrannical government from existing? I mean, that's the whole purpose of having the Second Amendment, so that society, the ones in America, the ones paying the taxes, the ones that make America work, have the right to protect themselves even from the government. So the two amendments that make America great are under attack. They're being threatened because you got people that want to redirect our mindset. What is it for? I mean, why is it so bad to be American? Why is it so bad to be patriotic? Why is it so bad to sing the national anthem, to stand up and put your hand on your heart, to respect the very symbol that reflects American sovereignty? I don't get it. One thing I do agree with, if you don't like it, you're more than welcome to leave. I'm sure there are other countries in this world that would love to get their hands on you. But anyway, HanK out.